And we're live, so welcome to everyone who's tuning in live today, and to those who are just watching this video after the fact. It's the Mark show today, I guess.
Yes.
Mark Stoakes and Mark Island. So, and Mark's going to show us the schema. I almost said SchemaMapper, but SchemaScanner, which is a completely different.
I've got SchemaMapper in there as well, if you want.
No, we'll just stick to the scanner today. Just one difficult item's enough at the time.
Yeah, sure.
But
So
I mean,
SchemaScanner.
Yeah, I should introduce you to everyone who is on this video. Mark, you've worked at SAFE for longer than I have. I know that. Must be
Yes,
nearly
20
20
years, I think.
Wow. And so, what's your job title now? Because I'm never sure what.
I'm on the FME Application Experts team.
Application experts.
Proof of concept. So now they're support, but it's mostly
Okay.
proof of concept for people. Yeah.
Yeah, I see. Whenever we sort of sell to a new customer, it's always you go in and do demos and yeah, proof of concept, I guess. So yeah.
Sometimes
Cool.
deeper dives.
Okay, so yeah. So the SchemaScanner, I think, went in 2021.1, but it's sort of new enough that I think we can include it here, and it did get some updates.
Well, I think it was really targeted. I think that was actually almost a bit of a mistake. It went in early, and it was really targeted for 2022. So
Okay.
people who want to use it should stick to 2022. I think there's a decent version in 21.2.
Okay. I did use it once in 21, but I didn't need. I was just playing around with it to see what it did. So
Yeah.
So yeah, okay. Well, yeah, sure. Take it away. And
Okay. Well, the first question would be, well, what does it do for us?
Yeah.
So,
what does it do? Yeah.
Yeah. So the SchemaScanner looks at the features that are running through it, and then tries to tell you what the schema, that's what we call the data model, is in FME.
Yeah.
So the list of attributes and their data types mainly.
Okay.
We have a method for representing schemas in FME. We have a special list attribute, which is just called attribute list, and I'll show you that in a second. And then that contains the names of all the attributes on the features that are passed through and their data types.
So it's almost like the schema reader then, because the schema reader does do that as well, doesn't it?
It replicates a lot of what the schema any format reader does.
Okay.
And it also replicates a lot of what the feature reader has a schema output port.
Okay.
And so it will give the same results as that as well. So yeah, why would we bother to have it? Well, first off, I'll just say that a couple of people have created FME hub transformers that are very similar and do some of this work as well. But we thought it needed a bit more TLC.
Yeah.
So on the hub, there's a schema setter, and there's a schema string width setter, and it will tell you the width of strings. So those will be kind of deprecated once FME 2022 is released, and hopefully this covers everything. And the big thing that SchemaScanner does that these other two won't do is handle date attributes, which is...
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
So somewhere here I've got that file folder that I can bring up, and I've got a JSON file here. So one of the reasons for using SchemaScanner is to kind of detect schemas of data sources that don't really have a strong schema or a very variable schema.
Okay.
JSON is one of them. This JSON file actually is very simple. I just quickly generated it from a CSV data set I've got. It's cell towers in the Vancouver area. And So you can see that it does figure out what attributes it's got on there, but it might not do a great job, particularly, and my FME is going to crash. So I'll just open up another one. FME, the latest build of FME 2022 is having trouble with Visual Preview.
Okay. That live presentations, it's always bound to happen.
Yeah, always,
it just
always
waits.
Challenges, yeah. So I'll not click around too much in Visual Preview.
Okay.
So we'll try that again. Drag on that JSON file, and there it is. Okay, so that's it running away. So what we can do is, particularly if a JSON file or XML file had lots of nested attributes and so on, you wouldn't get a really good schema out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we could use the schema scanner to take a closer look. And so we'll just put that there and scan that schema, and it'll pass through all the features that it's scanned.
Okay.
Excuse me, as well as the schema feature.
Fantastic.
And
now that's a list attribute, you said, so I guess
this will be the list attribute, and that's this list attribute here. And hopefully that's big enough that people can see it.
Yeah.
So the list attribute is just called attribute squiggle 0, 1, 2, 3, or however many attributes you've got.
Yep.
And then it's got two list attributes, the FME data type. So we've got an int for the new account, varchar, so on.
Okay.
Anyway,
fantastic.
So it's trying to pick out the best schema that it can do.
Gotcha.
So what does that look like?
Wow.
So it's quite complicated.
Yeah. There's a lot more settings and parameters than I realized there would be.
Yeah, well, the first version that you were digging around with was very simple and more like the schema setter that somebody built.
Yeah.
So, so the first parameter is, do we output the schema before features? It defaults to no. I've brought this up as a preset.
Okay.
So that's why I've got a lot of things set. So the default is no, and that's to make the schema scanner a non-blocking transformer. But actually, in most cases, you would want this to be yes.
Okay.
Because the schema scanner pairs very well with dynamic writers and those kind of concepts in FME.
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
Yeah, and so if you want to use those concepts, then really you need the schema to go out first. So in a dynamic situation, you push out the schema and say, okay, this is the feature class or table or whatever I want to create in this structure, and then you can load it with the features. So in most cases, you would say yes there. Unless you've got a huge data set, you would leave that blank. That's the number of features to scan. So look at all the features. And then this is a very nice addition.
Yeah, I like that. I can.
So this will tell us that the regular expression goes into the regular expression editor, and it tells the schema scanner to ignore attributes, certain attributes. And so the most, I can't scroll here now, but so the most common ones will be any of the FME attributes, like FME feature type. For some reason, we still put on every feature, multi-reader attribute, so that should come off. And then often, depending on the format you're reading, you'll have a bunch of format attributes. So you just want to get rid of those.
So is that something you've added in as a preset? Or? Okay.
Yeah, this is all my presets. So,
okay. I was thinking that.
Definitely, you know, if you use this a little bit or end up using it, I would definitely preset it with FME underscore and multi underscore, because you're never going to want those on your schema.
That's a really good idea, because you're right. You just don't want that.
Here for those people that haven't seen them. So, you know, once you've got a transformer, every transformer has them, and if you find and readers and writers, I think actually, if you find you're always setting a particular parameter on a transformer, then you can save it as a preset. So I just save that as SchemaScanner, and then you can also make that your default preset.
Okay.
So that's my default preset. So that's why it popped up.
So I've got a question that says, for field lengths, does it scan the subset order data or scan all of the data? I'm guessing it's scanning all of it. Yeah.
Here. So if I put 10, it'll just scan the first 10.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah. But that's
case sensitive or not, whether you worry about that. And then the types of scans and schema you can set. So on the left-hand side here, you can actually see the differences there. So I'm just scanning my numeric values, and it'll return whether it's an int 16 or real 64 or whatever.
Yeah.
Making it guess at that. But you can also ask it for explicit widths and precision. So that would give you a number bracket, 10, 2 or something like that. Strings similarly. So in this case, I'm asking for explicit string widths, so it's giving me varchars.
Okay.
And so on. Otherwise, you're just going to get string or text or something.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
And then I'm ignoring
anything that's empty. Okay.
Anything that's missing.
Okay.
And then I don't think I've got any dates in this data, but the date detection here. So I mean, date detection is pretty time consuming because it's got to apply this to every.
Right. Yes.
Have to do it on every record to figure out whether you actually popped up a date, but.
But that, I mean, it's nice that it does handle dates, because obviously that's a big thing that is in most people's data, has a date of some sort.
Particularly databases.
Yeah.
Well, actually, even humble shape files.
Yeah, absolutely. So it scans for the FME date by default, or you can tell it.
No date detection.
Okay.
And then yes, for those who aren't familiar with dates, we have an internal date format, which is this one here: year, month, day, hour, minute, second, all in one big integer.
Yep.
Or you can recognize different patterns. So we have
that's
hand.
Beautiful.
Then you can go into the editor and make your own date pattern. If you've got a CSV file that's got.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I love that.
Powerful.
Yeah, that's certainly more powerful than version I looked at in 2021, which didn't have any of those, and I don't think it had the ignore attributes option either, which was causing me a few issues. So.
And you'll see in a little demo I've got a bit later why that would help.
Yeah. Fantastic.
And then this last one, this is a tough one to explain. So I'll explain it a bit more in a demo later on. But this basically relates to what we were mentioning earlier about the dynamic workflows. So somehow you have to link this schema back to the actual data.
Yeah.
And so whatever the attribute name you put in here will be that linkage between the data that is passing through this transformer.
I mean, I think that was the bit that was confusing me in the older version, was because I've got these features and I've got this schema, but they're completely separate. And how do I tell the writer that this is a schema for these features? And
and that is tricky on the dynamic writers. And,
so that sounds like the answer to that question. Yes.
So I got 9,000 odd features and data features, let's call them, and then I got one schema. And then at the bottom here is a very slippery thing which can trip people up, which is this special FME format attribute, schema handling, schema only. So when a writer gets a schema feature, it has to know whether that schema feature's also got data on it.
Ah,
Is it my responsibility to just create the schema, or do I also have to insert any data? So by default, the schema scanner, and actually the schema out of the feature reader, if I just pop up one of those, you can see them. You can see in the feature reader, you can also get the schema out, which is similar to what we're getting here.
yeah.
They will both add this attribute because there's no data on this record. So we don't want to insert a null record into the data. So this record is used to just create the table, our target table.
Okay. This is very interesting because it's really like a new type of feature, in effect, a schema feature.
It's a metadata feature.
Yeah.
Threaded metadata.
Yeah, metadata, yeah. So, wow.
So this can trip you up because sometimes, for reasons I can't think of off the top of my head, sometimes you need to attach the schema, mainly because you lose the ordering of your features.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to attach the schema feature to all the data features because you don't really know which one's going to arrive first. Right. Like if I had to work on this data afterwards, odd things might happen.
Yes. And when I tried that earlier, that was my first instinct, was to say, oh, I've got the two separate, I'll use a feature merger to pull the schema onto it. But I guess if I wasn't careful, I could overwrite the data features and say that they were schema only. And
that's right. In which case you would never get anything written. And
that explains a heck of a lot.
Hidden little attribute here, you would actually just put in an attribute remover and get rid of it.
Okay.
And then everything would work as you kind of expected. But it's kind of hard in the documentation to find that. So
yeah, that's good to know about for sure.
So that's our first little schema scanner guide. So I've got a couple of other little demos just to illustrate why. Maybe we should put up another workspace. Is it this one here? Yeah.
There we go.
Here's your SchemaMapper, Joe.
Ah, of course.
That you were missing earlier on. Oops. Okay, so what are some of the use cases for SchemaScanner? Well, one of the reasons we kind of looked at this, we were looking at this transformer is actually around our work with Gartner and getting us onto the Gartner quadrants and so on.
Okay.
And being able to manipulate schemas cleanly was a big ask. And so that's why we started to look at this. And, obviously those two custom transformers on the hub tell us that this is something people
need,
use.
yeah.
1,000 plus downloads of that schema setter. So
got you.
It's pretty useful. So the use cases for SchemaScanner are mainly around dynamic workflows where the data changes often within the workspace itself, or maybe there's another concept called schema drift, which we've got a webinar on.
We did, yes.
And that's where typically the source data, but can be your destination data as well, is not a reliable schema. So today you might get this CSV file. Here I've got this an example here, business owners, and I write that to my PostGIS output.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow I might get a CSV file that's different.
Completely different, yes.
And so you need to know how to deal with that. So that's kind of schema drift. And so this is how SchemaScanner can work quite well with SchemaMapper.
Gotcha.
So in SchemaMapper, I've got a very simple setup here where I'm just renaming attributes.
Okay.
This is going into PostGIS, so that, PostGIS is mostly lowercase. It doesn't really like spaces in your attribute names, and so so we've got a little table in a spreadsheet, well, a CSV file that's just renaming my attributes. But now those attributes don't really, now they're different to my source ones. So
Yes.
this is where the schema scanner can rescue you.
Perfect.
So we can run this up to here. I've got similar settings to, so these are all attributes that we lost.
Right, because you've renamed.
Renaming, and actually clicking on my schema button, and
There we
then
go.
this is our new schema with the,
Yep.
with the data commits.
Yeah, I was thinking. So, I mean, you could make conditional like renaming inside your workspace. You could say,
Yes.
"Oh, it's a Tuesday, so I'm going to have uppercase names today," and then the schema scanner just scans that and says, "Oh, okay, that's what's coming in." Ah, I love that.
So similar settings I've got on this fellow here.
Mm-hmm.
I've added
SchemaMapper, yeah.
SchemaMapper. Some transformers create attributes as SchemaMapper. We didn't want that one. CSV format attribute, so on. Otherwise, it's pretty much the same.
It's the same.
And then here again, note we've got this schema definition name, FME feature type name, and
the schema is output first. I noticed that setting as well. So.
Yes, right. Which is important. That's a big
okay.
Count. So here is my feature type name on my schema. Now, when you're not really doing anything special, it'll just adopt the feature type name from the last transformer. So that's fine. But then if we look at the data features, that one second, I've moved the order of the output ports, so I'm confusing myself.
Yeah.
And then we should see here, FME feature type name is the same.
Okay.
I picked a bit of a random name. It just came from the SchemaMapper thing. But now on the dynamic writer, so the dynamic writer is doing two things. It's building the schema and then writing the data in a very dynamic way, meaning that whatever we send it will define the table layout. So we can give it any table name we want. That could also be an attribute. And then we're saying the schema source is coming from the schema feature, which is that special feature that we're creating. And then this one here, it's a very confusing name, so it's hard to get your head wrapped around. The schema definition name. So this is really the key between my schema feature and the data.
Gotcha.
Because as you'll see in a minute, we're not restricted to one data set in here. We could use a dynamic writer to create many different tables.
Yeah. That's impressive. They can do that. Okay, I mean that's logical. So the name comes from in the schema scanner. You set the attribute name, and that's what you tell it the schema is on the dynamic output.
Yeah.
That all makes sense. It's great.
Good. Hopefully. Okay, so
one quick question. Well, I mean, maybe this would come up in a short moment. But if you pointed two different data sets into the schema scanner, what would you get out of it? Would it be the like?
Right. We will answer that in 1 second.
Okay.
So one thing I was going to do, just mention about schema drift. There's other ways to do that in FME actually, but schema scanner, we were talking about that, so I added it here. Is comparing yesterday's schema with today's. So good alternatives, you can use the schema any format or the feature reader to do this. But I've got two CSV files that have slightly different schemas. We can run that through a couple of schema mappers, explode that special attribute that contains the schema, the attribute squiggle, list attribute, try and merge them back together. So if the schemas were exactly the same, everything would merge happily. And I can do a test here.
Okay.
And I can see that some attribute names changed, so that we lost the spaces and so on. So
interesting.
In this case, I'm testing for the length of characters as well. So we're getting longer
Oh, I see. Yeah.
characters as well.
Huh. I like that.
So we can, but you could use the feature reader, which has always been around.
Yeah.
Been around for a long
Yeah.
time to do
I
that.
mean, I
But
guess the SchemaScanner, you've got the advantage there of if you downloaded something from a web service mid workspace, you can scan that schema, and
yeah, right.
whereas you couldn't with the feature reader. So yeah, there's that.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, multiple
Yeah.
schemas. Asking about that doesn't look too different really to a single schema. I just got one here.
Okay.
So in this case, I'm using a dynamic reader. I'm reading some CSV files.
Okay.
And I've got two CSV files in my list here. I'm reading cell tower locations and cell signal cell signals. That's I just picked the two data sets.
Okay. So two different CSV files, two different structures, I'm guessing.
That's right.
Okay.
So if we run that data, getting different ones, and all the attributes are all getting jumbled up. I'm also creating a new attribute here, just for fun. So I'm taking a code attribute, which is 3 alphanumeric characters and then a bunch of digits. And I'm stripping off using, these are newish in maybe FME 21, slightly revised, regular expression tools in the editor. So this is a substring extractor. So you can look at that in the text editor. So I'm stripping off the first 3 characters.
Gotcha.
Making a new attribute for features that have that code attribute. And then, so now I've got 2 sets of features that I'm scanning, and one of them with a new attribute on it. There's my alpha code that I've just created, this column here. And you can see I've got 2 schemas. Features. So how do I do that? Well, I'm now using grouping.
Group by, gotcha.
So FME's got group processing in many, many transformers, of course.
Gotcha.
Group by the feature type. So that's in the case of CSV, that's the file name.
Mm-hmm.
Many of these attributes the same. It's not doing any date detection today. Still got my feature type name, just using that as the default.
Okay.
And so what does that look like over here?
So that will give you 2 different names, right? Exactly, yes. Oh,
so
fantastic.
One name for each of these.
Huh.
Got my different schema for each of those grouped sets of data. One for my cell signals and one for my cell towers.
I'm blown away by this. I really am. I mean, just because I tried it before and I was like, okay, that's interesting. I didn't.
Well, it did take me a few tries too.
This is fantastic. I mean, I can.
And then the dynamic writer, you see, we only have one object on the dynamic writer, so this is simplicity.
Kingsbury asks if dataset 1 has fields ABC and dataset 2 has fields ABCD, and we only want one output schema. What happens? Does the output schema contain fields ABCD?
In my case, I'm writing out to PostGIS.
Mm-hmm.
And so on my dynamic writer here, I'm using a dynamic attribute or an attribute for the table name, which is the FME feature type. So that's the same as my original CSV file name. And my schema source is the schema feature that just popped out of my SchemaScanner here. That's the second feature. These ones.
That's cool.
And
you just give it the name again.
My data and my schema feature is this
fantastic
feature type name.
Cool. So we're having some fun in the chat here because we're streaming this using YouTube and Twitch, and everyone's just found all the different commands you can use in Twitch. One of which returns an FME haiku. Another one asks a question out loud. It's got text to speech on there. So I think everyone jumped for a second when it started talking out loud. The question was, by the way, what would happen if we had two different schemas? Say you didn't do the group by setting on there, and you sent in two sort of slightly different schemas. Would it merge the two together into one output schema? Or
Yes.
okay, so it will be the sum of all of the different attributes.
Yes.
So like A, B, C, and C, D, E would give you A, B, C, D, E. It will be
Right at the
everything.
bottom here, so you've got a huge list of attributes. We should
Yeah.
see all the TX, which can these
Okay.
TX ones come from the towers, and the first ones come from, they're all blended together, I think. Should do.
Yeah.
Not-
That would make sense to me as well, because if it didn't merge them all together, then you'd potentially lose attributes on the
yeah, you would.
the
Yeah.
output. So I would say that.
I think it is, but did I run that? Rerun that? Oh yeah, there we go. Sorry, I didn't click on in the visual preview.
Oh,
So here
okay.
I am, power.
There we
You're
go.
Still looking at the old power, and then the uppercase ones are the cell towers.
Okay, I think that's answered the question. Yeah, fantastic. Was there?
Another interesting thing here is actually, maybe I should go back to that simpler one. So let me save that. Is an interesting. Should have done that in my first demo, which I still can do. So let me see.
Okay.
Well, no. But the interesting thing is that the SchemaScanner actually preserves the order of the.
Oh, it does. Okay.
Of your
Like
schema.
attributes. Yeah.
So and often that's so FME is a lot better at that now.
Mm-hmm.
So if I find that quick JSON file, wait a second, pop it up here. And that. SchemaScanner, and we'll get a schema. Okay, and that will be based on however we dug through this JSON file. If I add an attribute manager in here now, an attribute manager helps us.
Right.
So if I click on those and say, oh no, I want those all at the top. That's now my new order of
That's your new order.
data
And-
model. And if I scan those two,
that's. This is something I like to see in the transformer. It's all very complete and well thought out.
yeah. So there's
Like
all the
all-
TXs at
yeah.
the top.
That's superb.
So that's pretty nice. And then one last one. Do we have time?
Yeah, sure, as long as you like. It's
Is just so. What was the other use cases we had? So sort of if you're meddling with schema dynamic workflows and so on. And the other thing related around dynamic workflows is sometimes you merge data. And
so now someone was
so
asking,
that
well,
will
oh, sorry.
muck up your schemas.
So someone was just asking, well, what happens if you have two data sets with attributes in different orders? Which is, how does it get merged? And I'm guessing, yeah,
Who
the
wins?
first,
It's-
yeah, the
it-
first
my guess
feature.
would be to be the first one that came in.
Yeah, that would be my
That-
guess
that
as
is-
well. Yeah,
That's a data challenge for that person. They can
yeah, we could
download
try it
and
out sometime. Yeah.
report back.
Yeah, if you're going to ask these questions, we should make you try it and
Yeah.
answer it yourself. Yeah.
So I've got, in this little example, I've got two data sets. It's an LRS data set. I've got assets and poles and things.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got my LRS roads. And I'm using the neighbor finder. You probably can't see that down there, the tiny visual preview.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of dots and lines.
Okay.
Yeah.
So so lines and
no,
dots
I have
and
to select them both and preview them both. Whoops.
Yeah.
Select
Okay.
both.
Well, lines
There we
and
go.
dots, and they go into
There we
the
go.
neighbor
And
finder.
I want to
Gotcha.
move the ID number of each route onto the poles.
Right.
So I'm changing the schema slightly. I've got the NLFID. So I'm using neighbor finder to do that, measure extracting to get a measure attribute as well. And then we can use the schema scanner on that combined new data set. So whatever attributes we've transferred from, in this case, the routes to the poles, neighbor finder is adding them because we've set merged candidates and so on. Doing a little bit of cleanup, and schema scanner will give us that new revised schema.
Gotcha.
So I think that will be a pretty common use case for the schema scanner. When things have merged together, you still want to use this idea of a dynamic workflow because things might still change.
That's superb.
Yeah. For that.
I mean, that really makes a dynamic writer a lot more powerful and valuable, I think, than it has been before. Because, I mean, most of the time in that scenario, you'd have just used a static one and just manually changed it when you had to, I guess. But But now, fantastic.
I mean, and obviously it depends on the data you're working with. I mean,
for sure.
Data set in a database where the schema is fixed and so on, then it's a little bit more rigid and you're going to have to conform to that. But if you've got a bit of flexibility, then this works well.
Superb.
You can see here lots of options in the dynamic writing. So we use the feature type name and adding LRS. Again, we've got the feature type name as our key on the schema.
From schema feature. Wow.
Yeah.
So if you changed it from schema feature to something else, it would probably grey out the definition name, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, as long as you were unchecked.
Yeah.
I'm guessing. Maybe it wouldn't.
No, not necessarily, because we still have the source schema, but the data might have other characteristics.
Right. Yes, that's true. That's true.
That's
true.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Fantastic. Well, was there anything else to show on that? I think that's
People can experiment with that. I give thanks to our key developer on this, Graham. I work, especially around the dates. That was new.
That's fantastic. Yes, I should say that I did invite him on, but I think he's more of a background guy. He didn't really want to come on and present. So he says, I don't know how to use it. I just wrote it. I don't use it. So, okay. That's good. So, but if you want to talk to him, maybe you can come to the user conference later this year and he might be there. So
that's right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mark, and thank you to everyone who tuned in and asked all sorts of questions today. That was, fantastic. Next week, I can't remember what we're looking at next week. I think it's the unfolded format. So, so if you're interested in that format, tune in next week. Week after that, I'm pretty sure it's the Esri reprojector, and then the week after that, I think it's the release date. So by that time, there won't be any sneak peeks, but
Right. It'll just be the release webinar.
Yeah, we're getting close. Okay, well, thanks everyone, and we'll say goodbye to you all, and I'll just cut you all off now. So again, thanks again, and tune in next time, and I look forward to seeing if you do take up that data challenge then, and what you've got for us. But okay, thanks, folks.